My name is Donald Hay. I am 86 years old, and like all the people in this film, I'm living with an acquired sensory impairment, that of my eyes. Age does not diminish the capacity of older people to feel the full range of human emotions. We are still as eager as ever to live life to the full. We all acknowledge that health resources are finite. The aim of this film is to provide health and social care professionals with an increased awareness of the physical and emotional issues faced by older people with a sensory impairment, as well as the best means of breaking down any communication barriers that prevent older people getting across the full extent of their needs.
My husband was deaf always. He was only really slightly deaf when we got married, but it gradually got worse, particularly during the time he was in the army. And right at the end, when he was ill, he was completely deaf. So I've been through all the different stages with it, really. And it did affect my life, particularly my social life.
Oh, well, going out for a meal for me is a no-go now, because I do things like knocking glasses of water over and spilling food all over the place and getting into quite a muddle.
We couldn't go to any social gatherings, parties or anything like that, because in that sort of background noise he couldn't hear.
And if after a bit you just don't give up when things like that happen.
He was always a bit paranoid, and I find too, really, with my own hearing, now I experience some of these things. It is very easy to become paranoid.
What tends to happen is you get very irritated. I used to find it with the hearing, used to say, oh, these stupid people, why can't they realise that we can't hear them?
And he got himself isolated, you see. After he finished work, he said he didn't really want to meet people anymore because it was such a strain.
This social isolation is a real problem, and it does really lead to serious depression.
I think if you read the newspapers and don't take part in life, you get a very jaundiced view about what's going on in the world, and that is very depressing.
I need help all the time for things like shopping, and another thing which I find very upsetting is not being able to read my own correspondence. I will be getting Christmas cards soon, and I won't know who my Christmas cards are from until somebody will come along and read them for me.
All those years in the newspaper business, you know, and I can't read a newspaper now. Which is a bit annoying.
With a sight loss, you're at risk all the time. As soon as you step out of your front door, you're at risk.
Reading prescriptions and things like that, where you have to tick boxes and things. I can't see the boxes. Sometimes I find that I'm ticking the wrong drug. There's things written on the packets telling me that I mustn't do this or I mustn't take that, and I can't read it. So I think there is a danger there that I might be doing something that I shouldn't.
Well, the two strong emotions with anybody with sight and hearing loss are fear of being a nuisance to other people, and also fear of making silly mistakes and looking a fool. And this is a constant anxiety.
If you ask people to repeat what they say and you don't hear it the second time or even the third time, I'm inclined to pretend that I have heard it. And then the give and take of the conversation goes.
And we all desperately need to talk to each other and to have some conversation. And this is the biggest deprivation, loss of confidence and having to depend on other people.
I do get fed up, but I spend 90% of my time on my own. As I say, my daughter and son-in-law have got 2 young children, lovely grandchildren, and they've got their own lives to live. And I think to myself, the more time they give to me, the less time they'll have to spend with their children.
I've got a friend who comes to Age Concern and has a very happy time with those of us who understand his problems, goes home to his family, and they hardly bother to speak to him because they say, oh, well, he's deaf and he won't hear what we're saying.
You know, some people just haven't got the patience with deaf people.
You get very, very cross with people who don't know how to help you.
He couldn't hear in the dark. That was a great disadvantage.
When you have a sight loss and you're talking to somebody and you can't see their facial expression, right, and that's a terrible frustration, you know. Yeah.
People do something peculiar with their voice when they make a joke. I mean, I experience this, that I never get the punchline. You know, I get all the preamble, and then there's a punchline, and everybody laughs, and I've missed it.
And deafness, particularly because of it being invisible, and with the Disability Discrimination Act, this business of access, people in wheelchairs, they have their ramps and all the rest of it, but people with hearing and sight problems are equally denied access.
I do take part in meetings, and I tell the meeting before we start that I'm deaf. If people could look at me when they speak and speak clearly, which they do for a minute, but they never keep it up.
I have got a phone with large numbers, but it's still very difficult, and I find I'm phoning wrong numbers all the time.
One issue that comes up very often at our meetings with elderly people is that they dislike having their needs assessed on the telephone.
They do say that I can contact a phone number, but I mean, it's not all that easy.
I think there is a certain fear of talking on the telephone because it may be recorded. And there is a fear of authority, definitely. Elderly people were brought up not to complain when they were children. And I think they feel it difficult. They find it difficult to complain and say what they really think. They think they ought to look after themselves, really. I think that is part of the problem. And they want a sympathetic person there who can understand them and draw them out, which you can't do on the telephone at all.
As we get older, we deteriorate, and things, you know, aren't the same, such as I've got diabetes, which I've had for, now about 6 years, I think it is. But for some reason or other, they haven't stated that on this assessment form. So really, it's out of date now, and I would have thought that, you know, a new assessment would give a more up-to-date picture of how my condition at the moment.
All you've got to do is come to the house, sit down like you do there, sit there, get a cup of tea or something, and then chat. That works very well.
It would certainly help me, but you know, I understand the situation these days with costing and whatever, and it all takes time, I suppose. Did get a letter from them, it's about a month ago now, saying that someone would be coming along to see me. But that's a month ago, and I haven't heard anything more.
The audiologist said he cannot hear speech at all, so it's no good shouting at him. And I would tell the nurses this, and they would continue to shout. He was very unhappy in hospital because he said that all the nurses are so angry with me and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And that was just because they were shouting at him. And when you shout, you just look angry.
People can help when they're talking to me by remembering that Clear speech makes sound sense.
The clearness of the voice is much more important than the volume, actually, because you can increase the volume with your hearing aid. I always arrange it so that I've got my back to the light, because you can see people's lips better if the light is shining on their faces.
Because people with hearing loss are quite able to lip read very well, given half a chance.
I think the thing really is you want people to look you straight in the face and speak clearly.
Keeping a normal speech rhythm, not chopping things up and say, how are you today? You're keeping it to a normal speech rhythm.
Speak a little bit slowly, not exaggerated.
But speaking slowly and clearly and putting slightly more emphasis on the beginnings of words and not dropping the voice at the ends of sentences.
And then deaf people can usually hear one way or another.
It's a very good idea to write things down, because it sort of saves an awful lot of misunderstanding, especially with times and dates and things like that. With a person with a sight loss, if you are going to write something down, it has to be in huge letters in very thick pen.
Our GP was brilliant because he used to give us a double appointment, so we had time to write down. I wrote down everything the doctor said, and so he could understand what was going on, and that was brilliant.
Guiding, not grabbing people by the arm and helping them across the road, letting them tell you what they really want. I like to tell people to put their arms down straight and let me hold their elbow, rather than put their arm through mine and propel me along.
I know where everything is, and my cleaning lady, for instance, knows my problem, and so she knows to pick things up and put them back in the same place.
It's the audio descriptions which we desperately need for somebody to describe things that we can't see, and to give us a chance to, perhaps tactile, to get a pleasure from feeling things and smelling things, to compensate for not being able to see. I was on a little outing. I was looking across the estuary, and the friends who were with me were saying, oh, what a lovely view, and talking about different objects that they could see. And this very kind, thoughtful friend noticed I was looking a bit disappointed, and she bent down and picked up a handful of shells and a strand of seaweed. So I had the tactile pleasure of the shells and the feel and the smell of the seaweed to compensate for not being able to see what the other people were seeing. And this is what we need, really. We need people to be much more aware of the best ways to help. There's a great need for more training and more awareness.
You mentioned the incident earlier on with in the classroom. Could you the incident with the woman put?
Yes.
Could you repeat that? Could you repeat that